Alright, in this lesson we're going to talk about the physical geography of West Africa. So we've covered North Africa, now moving into West Africa. One of the questions I want you to think about in terms of physical geography, what is important to humans in an area? Like in general, but specifically to the people of West Africa. You can see kind of our objectives here, what we're trying to be able to do. Just it kind of we'll do this in class, but thinking about this, like what would you picture West Africa to be? So just kind of think about that question as we kind of jump into talking a little bit about what you might find in this area. It's very diverse. Some of the desert from the Sahara extends down into West Africa in an area called kind of like the Sahel is what it's called. And it's like a transition zone. So it's not desert, it's more like a semi-arid kind of climate. So there are deserts, there are savannas, which are like grasslands, there are rainforests, there's coastal areas, which are going to get more rainfall, kind of more Mediterranean climate. A lot of it's rolling hills and slopes. So it's definitely very diverse in what we find there. So kind of moving into this region, I'm not really sure that there's much I want to talk about here. So we'll just get past that. There are some mountains in the area. Highest peak is a kind of an extinct volcano, which is kind of a common thing. We talk about Kilimanjaro, and the next unit in East Africa, you'll see the same thing show up there. So those are some of the plateaus. There's some nomadic people that live out there. The Tibestai Mountains. I'm not sure exactly the best way to pronounce that. You can see kind of moving into more of the grasslands areas here. It's not nearly as arid. The Niger River, or Niger, you can, I think, pronounce it either way. I've always said Niger, but I think maybe Niger is a little bit more acceptable of a pronunciation. It's the longest and most important river. Kind of flows all the way from the very edge of West Africa all the way into the country of Nigeria. And Niger kind of flows through those. That's actually where it gets its name. 2,600 miles in length, so pretty long. They use it for irrigation. They can also use it for hydroelectric power. And then for fishing and transportation as well. So, an important river. Here's another one, the Senegal River, that's also important. You got to remember when an area is very dry, rivers are going to be more, maybe even more important than an area where, water is readily available from like lakes or other bodies of water. A couple of other, Volta River, there's two of them, kind of flowing through several different countries. Lake Chad is one of the largest lakes in this part, in the western part. The amount of water in the lake is also dependent on how much is being used for irrigation. One of the things you'll see as we go through Africa, and I think it's particularly as Lake Chad has like lost a lot of its size. It's shrinking because they're pulling so much water to irrigate. If it's not raining, right, you got to have water from another way, so they often will pull water to irrigate. And so it's lost a lot of its size. So Lake Chad has lost maybe like 80% of its size, something like that. I think that number kind of sticks out to me. So just kind of really interesting. You can see the video posted here. It would be a good one to watch that talks more about that. Kind of already mentioned this, lots of different climate zones, everything from arid climate to more like grasslands. This is really interesting here. So one of the big problems facing West Africa is something called desertification. And what this means is the desert is expanding in size. It's growing. If you watch this video, it's all about how they're trying to, calls it the Great Green Wall. Essentially, they're trying to plant trees and other plants to keep the desert from expanding. It sounds kind of like a weird thing, but they're being intentional about helping plants reproduce and spread. So that the desert cannot continue to kind of spread. So intentionally growing things helps kind of be a windbreaker, I think, also. It doesn't, there's less sand blowing and things like that that's maybe causing more of this shift in climate. There is climate change that seems to be evident. There's definitely a debate whether this is like because of human, use of fossil fuels and things like that, or if it's just a natural cycle of the earth and that it's just warming up. But there is climate change that does seem to be happening for whatever reason. Scientists debate this, and lawmakers debate that too. So this is kind of one of the issues. This is a really good video to watch. You can see that here's the green section here is this where they've been planting all these trees, trying to keep the Sahara Desert from moving south. And it really has. They've been able to track this, and like the Sahara Desert has grown in size, over the last several hundred, or maybe even maybe as far back as like 1,000 years, they would know exactly where kind of the desert seemed to end. So at a time, if I can kind of use my cursor up here, like the desert probably was more kind of like ending around here, and now it's kind of like moved further south. So they're trying to keep that from becoming further problem. So that's called desertification, and they're just trying to stem the effects of that. Some of the savanna climates are tropical wet dry, meaning they have a wet and dry season. That's kind of south of the Sahel. So kind of already acknowledged this, water can be used for hydroelectric power. They also use solar power. It's kind of expensive though, so I think a lot of that technology hasn't necessarily reached certain places in Africa. Oil and natural gas are both fossil fuels, so they have to be drilled from the ground and taken up that way before they can be used. I think most power that's used, well, I wouldn't want to say exactly how most power is used in Africa. Maybe a blending of all of these. I don't know if solar power is maybe as common as the other ones. Some of the resources that are available, you can see just different countries have different things. Some of them it's more, like hardwoods, so it would be like forestry, cutting down trees, and then some of them are things that have to be mined. See salt mining up there. That's been kind of a really important one for many years. Ghana, we're going to talk about Ghana a little bit in the Kingdom of Ghana in the history of West Africa, and gold was kind of very important. So Ghana did a lot of trading of their gold that they had at the time. So that's even continued up until today with things. So often the West Africa is known as the Gold Coast, and we'll probably talk about that in this next video segment that we do about the history. So I think that's the last slide. So one of the big things that should stick out to you here is the whole idea of desertification and just how that's affecting West Africa. So with that being said, our question was what's important to an area, and one of the things we've kind of already established this, but water being extremely important for life. So if a desert, a characteristic of a desert is less water, not having water because of the desert means that they got to figure out some way of helping the conditions, and so that's why this whole idea of desertification has to be taken seriously in Africa, because people need water. So that is, there's a whole list of resources here, and these are important. They definitely can make money for the country, but without water, people can't live in an area. So it kind of comes back to although growing crops is important, and having animals is important for food sources, but without water, none of that stuff's going to happen either. So it kind of comes back to water, in my opinion, and I think most people would agree, is the most important resource. We've kind of already established that in the ancient civilizations units that we've already gone through. So that's all I've got. A little bit shorter of a video this time, and thanks for watching.